being an actor, I could see being kind of nervous, especially in the 70s. You had never seen a movie like that before, being like, is this going to work? You know, what are we shooting? And Darth Vader, it's, I am Darth Vader, and you will be. Yeah, and if I was an actor on this, I'm like, this is going to suck. What are we making?
All right.
So on James Gunn's Twitter the other day, he was talking about how he was on the way home from like a big pitch meeting for Guardians 1. So this was a while ago. And on the way home, he had the thought that he wanted to create a movie that made the audience feel the way that they felt when they saw Star Wars for the first time. So really what that means is that like Star Wars was a huge inspiration to Guardians of the Galaxy, which is something that's new and tangible right in front of us, something that we watched become what it is today. And it just made me think about how like culturally, like how important Star Wars really is and how it's one of the gods, you know?
Well, you can definitely see that. I mean, in Guardians of the Galaxy, you said that, you know, they're very different movies if you look at them one way.
Yeah, they are very different.
Very different styles. But at the same time, you can see parallels between Han and Leia and Pete and Gamora.
Yeah, I see both Star Wars and Guardians like front and center is family. Like they're both centered around family, which is probably something that he kept in mind when making Guardians, because it might even do it better in some ways. Like the feeling I get of family from Guardians is so strong, almost as strong as Star Wars.
And they're a relatively like diverse group. What I mean by diverse is not just humans. A group that are kind of misfits, and they have a ship that they always go on that everybody knows.
Becomes
that's
kind of
been through
iconic.
hell. So there's you can see parallels in there where you could see him looking at the source material and being like, oh, this could really work with kind of a Star Wars vibe.
Right. But Guardians is not fantasy. And you told me earlier, I feel the same way, but you also acknowledge that Star Wars is a fantasy.
Well, that's what separates it.
It's a sci-fi fantasy.
That's what separates it. I would still argue a movie like Star Wars and Guardians are close. I feel like there's a similarity. I just think one takes its influences from other places and one from the other. I just think what Star Wars did that separates it from a lot of swhat I'm not going to say all, because I don't have confidence. There may be something else that was inspired by samurai movies and what was the other big influence?
Westerns, right?
Westerns as well, and fantasy, right? So
fantasy, yeah, that's the vibes I get from Star Wars.
So it separates it a bit more, but I mean, I still think they have a bit of relation, and I definitely can see how they work. I mean, just the whole idea of like a quest going around space, even that kind of thin relation is enough to see where you can kind of.
It's cool to see how like James Gunn could be considered like a new George. James Gunn is a new George Lucas, and I'll tell you why. Because like he pretty much created the that breakthrough to space in the Marvel universe. Thor did it a bit, but Guardians is the one that really opened it up. So he's created a universe within Marvel. James Gunn has, in my opinion, and he's now moving on to create a brand new DC universe, and like both of those more or less is what George Lucas did with Star Wars. He's just more of a pioneer, George Lucas.
Yeah, and I think they had different ambitions. We'll get to more of that later.
Well, it's a new age, you know?
Yeah, but James Gunn is probably the closest thing we have.
Yeah.
I just think it's a different era too. It's so hard to compare.
It's cool to think about, but like they do like both give me that vibe that like they're creators of fictional universes.
And I mean the influence of Star Wars just can't be denied in James Gunn, and you can see the parallels. And just in most movies made today, I mean, Star Wars, along with Jaws, is the prelude to the world we live in now. That those two started it all.
Exactly. And you know, like Guardians is notorious for the humor, especially the first one is hilarious. Like it's hilarious, it's funny, and the humor, so much visual comedy. Remember in the first Guardians where they're in the prison and Rocket is telling them about the plan, and in the background Groot has already started executing the plan. Just hilarious stuff like that. And
or with the arm or the leg.
oh my god, yeah, Rocket, dude. Bradley Cooper is just
I forget it's Bradley Cooper.
The way he's hollering and laughing as Rocket is so great.
Great character acting, really great character acting.
I feel like it has similar comedy to old Star Wars, except just cranked up to 11
and a bit
way more
trying
in
to be
your
a bit
face.
more modern. Yeah, there's definitely a subtlety to the Star Wars one. A lot more. That's one thing I notice about a lot of old properties. Things just feel more subtle. I'd say that's like the one thing that separates a lot of old and new.
Yeah, but I find with old shit, you end up finding things funny that weren't meant to be funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think when it obviously was meant to be a funny gag, but Han Solo just sprinting at the stormtroopers?
No, yeah, we find that dropping.
It kills me. I think more than it should makes me laugh.
Of course, right? Like, because it's just it looks a bit cheesier. Than it would by today's standards. But I think what you get, a lot of movies can feel more intense. But at the same time, I think we've lost a bit of the subtlety. That sounds so pretentious. And I'm not saying that makes today's movies terrible. There's plenty of amazing movies coming out now.
You kind of want jokes to go over your head sometimes, you know?
And you can get too subtle, right? If you go back to the 50s, those are great movies. You go to whatever, like Vertigo or Rear Window, or those really old movies like Alfred Hitchcock and stuff like that. It's just, it moves too slow for me. You know,
well, it's hard. Like we're just raised on different stuff.
Yeah, it's too subtle at that point.
Yeah,
it's too much paying attention, not too much going on. My short attention span can't take it. You get to about the 70s, I'm good. And forward,
like I haven't watched like much of that, but like the oldest shit that I've watched is the Nosferatu film from I think 1911, 1912, and it's a silent film. It's in black and white and. Half the time you're looking at pictures instead of moving images. Like,
well, here's my thing with watching those.
But that's like gives you a whole ambiance. Yeah. You watch that for a different reason.
And I have watched some of them, but my thing is like there's people who watch them and like love them, but I feel like you don't really love them for the entertainment value. I think it's more of an appreciation of what they pioneered. And the technical aspect of what they kind of started. You're not really enjoying it.
I'm more so like admiring how that movie was made. And like I'm usually thinking about how did they achieve that shot back then? How was that done back then? Not being entertained by the story.
You know what does hold up? Some of the oldest stuff I've ever watched, Laurel and Hardy. This is going. They started in the 20s. This is like silent movie age.
Okay.
But they went into like 30s, 40s, 50s, right? Like, and they had all these short movies.
Yeah.
And I feel like comedy really holds up. If you just want some good, simple, like clean comedy, especially physical comedy.
Is it like a sitcom?
No, it's like two friends and it's getting into shenanigans. Like,
oh, okay.
Whether they're like, they're working on like painting a house or something like that. Right. And stuff ensues.
Kind of like.
But that stuff holds up because at the end of the day, we all love just simple, like clean, dumb humor. And that's what it does. And what's so impressive about that stuff, so I'm kind of weird. It's almost like there's this period in the 40s and 50s and kind of 30s with the early sound movies where I can't watch those. But some of the silent stuff, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, and Laurel and Hardy, you can really just appreciate from a physical comedy standpoint. It's still very entertaining because they're doing it all live, doing all these crazy falls, all these stunts, no help.
Yeah.
That stuff is still... almost 100 years later,
it still holds up.
Entertaining to watch.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I rewatched some old Mr. Bean, and you get that it's a stage performance. You're watching someone be visually funny, like they're picking up on weird social beats, and you know, you watched a lot of Mr. Bean growing up too. So that's more of a new age type thing.
But it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, to me, it's the same thing, and there's a lot to be said for. That type of comedy holding up. People should check out more of it every now and then, not all the time.
I checked out the vampire Dracula film, but it was the Christopher Lee Dracula.
Oh, he's terrifying in that. That's got the great shot where he goes to
I've
kiss
watched-
the woman.
Yeah.
And then he comes back up and you see the blood on his face.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Subtlety in old movies, they didn't show her getting her neck bit
Yeah.
and all the blood everywhere. You just see
Can
him
we
with his
show
face
this?
and it's scary enough.
Can we see it? No, you guys can't see it.
You
But
should look it up. Christopher Lee as Dracula.
this is from
Terrifying.
1958. So I watched this back in October. I do a Halloween movie watch list or whatever, and I wanted to watch a lot of the old Draculas, so I watched this one. Definitely one of the oldest movies I've ever seen. The music is so loud and banging in your ear all the time.
That's what they had back
Yeah.
then. You get the
Yeah.
from the orchestra.
So dramatic, so dramatic. It's like a theatrical performance.
That's all they had. They had to get you
yeah.
with the sound because the special effects
So
department.
it's
wasn't
much different. It's a much different than watching movies from these days. But I really wanted to get into
But Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars, and how Star Wars like defines a lot of people's youth and how important it is to people and how it unlocked a lot of young kids' imagination. Made me passionate about movies and get into movies.
You know what's kind of smart? It's been able to define people's youth over the past, what is it now, like 46 years? Because I just think it picked the right gaps, if you know what I mean. So there's basically, between each trilogy, there's about 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And basically those kind of intervals, they were able to capture every single youth group throughout a few generations.
Yeah.
Up to now, right? So you have the 70s and 80s stuff, which is for all like the late boomers and like Gen X kids. And then by the late 90s, you get, the prequels, which is like for Gen X millennials, old Gen Zers like us. And then you have these new ones, which is Gen Z and whatever comes after Gen Z. I don't know.
Who cares?
Right. But
It's not important yet.
So they had this, like, they were able to space out each series in a way that kind of created this solid, like, 10, 15-year period to let all the kids get into it and make it, like, a part of their childhood.
Yeah.
We got the prequel time.
We got the prequel time, and that's great because that was, like, Star Wars' first return, And since then, Star Wars had another return with the sequels. Like, Star Wars returns twice. You know what I mean? So we got that second wave of it.
I would say that we caught the tail end of the prequel
We
wave.
did.
Because 99 is the first one. We weren't
But,
alive.
dude, if I...
I would say, like, Revenge of the Sith
would you
be
rather
the one.
be a kid in 77 than what we had?
Well, no.
And then I'll tell you why I'd rather
From a
have what
totally
we have.
From a total Star Wars perspective?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'd want to be a kid in 77.
Okay. But now, do you want me to tell you why I'd prefer us? Because I get to look back and remember being a little baby boy in the theater watching Anakin turn into Darth Vader and be like, everything connected. I'm like, oh. Like, I knew that he was Darth Vader, but, like, seeing it come to fruition was crazy. And then, from about the age of 9 to, like, 13, Star Wars The Clone Wars was on TV every week, and we're getting to fill in the gaps before episode 3. That was my childhood. The Lego was Clone Wars. The action figures was Star Wars The Clone Wars. Star Wars The Clone Wars was huge for me, and I just really enjoyed that, and I don't think I'd trade it to be a kid in 77.
Here's why I would
As much as I'd admired being a kid in 77.
Here's why I think kid in 77 is a bigger deal. Because if you're a kid in 77, that's probably the most magical Star Wars is ever going to see, because it's before there were big action movies like that were common and were popular. And kids back then didn't have the same access to media. So something like that just would have seemed way more awe-inspiring and way more mind-blowing.
Yeah, unlocked so much.
And look, you're seeing the prequels in 99 or the early 2000s, right? I'm sure it was great.
But you got it. You're comparing it.
But now
right?
you're comparing. Jurassic Park has come out.
That's true.
Terminator's come out.
It's a golden age,
Jones has come out. And then you have these movies aren't as good, but if you're talking from an effects standpoint, Independence Day has now come out. Armageddon is
Imagine
coming
just being
out.
the perfect age to watch all those classic films in the theater.
Yeah. Whereas if you're in 77, it's a totally new thing, and you're like, oh my god.
Totally understand that. You know why I'd love to be a kid then? Imagine that first Christmas the year after Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
Getting all those Star Wars presents, and Star Wars is the new fucking thing. Darth Vader's everywhere, brand new. Empire hasn't even come out yet. Everyone's obsessed over the biggest movie of the year. That would have been of all time.
At that time.
Damn.
And the thing is,
wow,
you'd be caught totally off guard.
Yeah.
Because you would have either just seen posters or heard your friends talking about it, and then you would have gone in and just had your mind absolutely blown.
Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, all over TV, everywhere.
That doesn't compete to me with Phantom Menace will never be as good to me from the get. Seeing the prequels will never be as good to me.
Kind of felt like watching old footage of it kind of fell flat. Right?
Well, it's just because you're going in with expectations, and that already taints it just a bit, not too much, but just a bit.
Yeah.
Whereas the best movie experiences are when you go in and just see something that you weren't having high expectations for, and it just blew your mind.
Why do I feel like The Force Awakens was much better received and welcomed than The Phantom Menace?
Because people were just because it was an overcorrection for something that people really hated, and I honestly think we didn't realize how bad it could get.
Yeah,
and they just gave us exactly what we wanted.
Yeah,
and
the nostalgia,
but it's a short-term gain for long-term pain. Because I think at the time we were all really, really happy, but pretty quickly it was that wore off.
You know what I'm also thinking about? Every movie at the beginning of each trilogy takes place on a desert planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame.
So close, could have been Tatooine, but we got Jakku now.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It just seems redundant and it's silly, but I guess it's got to separate itself, right? I mean, they're still doing well.
Star Wars really unlocked the creativity in myself, and whenever I wanted to draw or something, it'd be Star Wars, and Star Wars introduced me to enjoying other things like Indiana Jones and Pirates of the Caribbean, and being able to grow up with those things all my life and translate all that excitement into creativity. That's why I draw, because I draw these things that I'm excited about. And with the James Gunn thing, it's inspired countless other projects. Star Wars, boomed. How many films wouldn't exist without Star Wars?
Exactly, and I'm willing to bet that most of the movies I love have similarities to Star Wars, because Star Wars, those were the first movies that I watched over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And so they probably have a deep subconscious influence on what we like.
For sure.
And it is that way for a lot of people. It's almost a religion at this point.
Star Wars is a fucking religion.
It's getting ridiculous for me at this point. And now that Disney owns it, that just makes it seem messed up.
Yeah.
Now, but I don't want to kill everybody's fun. Don't get me wrong. I would still go to, where is it, in Disneyland?
Galaxy's Edge.
Galaxy's Edge. And I would have an amazing time.
Oh my god!
But that shows its appeal that they can open a whole theme park.
Can I tell you something about Galaxy's Edge and everyone listening right now? Because it's actually insane what they've created with this Galaxy's Edge. So let me just go off the rails for a minute, okay? Start the clocks. There's this Galaxy's Edge is the Star Wars world within the Disney World, okay? And it takes place on Batuu, which is a planet, which is now in Star Wars canon. And when you're there, it takes place at the beginning of the Star Wars timeline. It's a real place in canon. The stores you go into at Galaxy's Edge, they have an animatronic operator named Doc Ondar in the lightsaber store. He's a canon character now, and he's real. And his shop is canon in Star Wars. Same with all these other places and shops. They all have their own real backstories within canon, and so you're living in Star Wars for real, because everything you're experiencing there did happen in the Star Wars timeline. Cool. That integration is just crazy, and
I would love to go.
I want to go so bad.
I'd probably that would get me excited about Star Wars.
It's so crazy, because I just watched an 1.5-hour video of the entire Star Wars canon timeline, And it starts at the beginning at Batuu and Galaxy's Edge. It is like some intergalactic gas station type stop off planet. That's what it is. And it's just really crazy. And I wrote here, Star has inspired countless other projects from multiple different mediums. So now you have entire parks that are inspired by Star Wars, but like also Star Wars did a ton. John Williams did a ton for music.
Yeah, and and special effects, big one too.
Such pioneers when it comes to score and special effects, especially.
Well, they funded Lucasfilm and funded that company alone created so much innovation in the movie industry. Like, I feel George Lucas, like, if you look at actual movies he's made, it's really not a lot, but his influence in the movie industry behind the scenes, whether it's Skywalker Sound or Lucasfilm, is just can't be ignored.
Back since it was in 1977, I remember George Lucas, he handpicked people who had a little bit of experience in the field when it comes to special effects. And George Lucas handpicked these people and formed Industrial Light and Magic, which is the special effects company team for Star Wars. And it was founded in 77. And George Lucas would like hand off footage or scenes from movies, like old like World War II films of fighter planes, and he'd be like, I want this, but I want it done in space. And they're like, what? How do you do that? Like, that wasn't a thing that was done back then. So they just had to figure out how to do it. Making these props, making these not figuring out how to do it digitally through a computer, but how do you make this happen without special effects? You got to make it yourself. And Lucasfilm are huge pioneers in that.
And especially it's the pre-CGI days, right? So it's just the time and care, and a lot of stressful nights, I'd imagine, where you just hit like a dead end. But I mean, it led to a really golden age of action movies going into the early 80s. I mean, it kind of starts with Jaws, but there's a run from like 75 to like really like even into the 90s of just incredible action movies. Like we could go do a whole podcast on that. You know what I'm kind of wanting to do now? Like, let's do a let's watch. Like, so me and you watch this video along with you guys. We put a window up on the screen so you can watch too. But I love these behind the scenes of how movies are made, and you're watching these visual effects creators make the movies. And there's ones for Star Wars that were like on the bonus DVDs and stuff. And it's just such fascinating movie making facts and stuff, and that'd just be a cool thing to do. Yeah, we should probably make that sort of thing. Get to it, even scenes we can get through in the coffee room. Yeah, that would be really.
We kind of give our live thoughts on stuff.
It'd be really good to do. You know what I love about Star Wars too? One of the biggest things, I just love how it defines a real place and time in pop culture. And I think 1977 is an amazing year in pop culture, and it's just it's big.
It was the start of something huge.
It's big and loud, and like it would be so cool back then. You have this new space movie that's just blowing everybody's minds, and then you have Saturday Night Fever, which is hipping everybody to the disco scene. John Travolta's blowing up. All those songs, Staying Alive, blowing up, and wow. And my favorite band, stupid band, Kiss, is massive, and they have their big show and makeup. Just this like really loud, fantastical time in entertainment as far as what was big. And those and that just scratches the surface, but those are three really things that were kind of at the top in 77. And I just I really love that time, and Star Wars is kind of the biggest thing in that year. So I just love how it encompasses the vibe of that year really well, in my opinion, as someone who wasn't around back then.
Star Wars is like something that Jurassic Park too, but something that came to fruition in the 70s, the 80s era, and is still alive and well today. That's incredible. That's an amazing feat, and I think, as I don't know if there's anything else, Star Trek is still alive and going. They got an HBO show out right now.
Star Trek is almost cooler because it's more fun to be a fan, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because Star Wars is really this all-appealing, broad thing to everybody.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Trek, it's this community and it's self-sustaining. The community's big enough and passionate enough where they don't need to necessarily have the numbers Star Wars does, and it just keeps it going, keeps the content a lot more pleasing to fans, at least from what I understand.
Yeah.
So they're a whole different thing, and I would love to go to a Star Trek convention, speaking of which, just to witness what that's like.
It would be pretty amazing.
But I've never dived into Star Trek. What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I want to give it a chance, because part of me is really starting to respect it.
like these like universes and these people that have created these universes, like George Lucas especially, like I feel like they set an example of pursuing something that like you believe in. Like George wanted to create this universe, so he went ahead and did it, no matter the cost. It was super ghetto the way that they'd film some of these scenes and the places they'd film in and what the equipment they're using. Like it was pretty terrible back then. Being in the middle of the desert back then, when like production and everything wasn't as glamorous as it is today.
Yeah, and I can't imagine doing those shoots. And I know George Lucas is a perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
So he would have been a real, I'd imagine, task master. But he was just he was very forward thinking. I saw a quote from him that said, if you get the kids, then you'll have an audience for the next 30 years. And like nobody thought like that back then.
Yeah.
You know, it was all about the adults.
Wow.
Like just to have a budget like that for a kids movie
Yeah.
at that time would have been crazy. And now that's the norm, right? Like just to pioneer, but it was really an insane thing he was doing.
Star Wars is so alive today because it appealed to kids back then.
Yeah.
So when those children grow up, they want to pass it on to the next generation. That's what he went after, and that's the most important. Who wants to appeal to adults?
Exactly.
You want to catch the kid inspire the kid while they're young, so that they grow up with that inspiration and pass it down to the next kid.
Like, okay, Chinatown, starring Jack Nicholson, came out in 1974.
Okay.
I'm willing to bet most of you out there don't know that movie. I didn't see it till very recently. It's an amazing movie, one of the best movies of the 70s, probably better than Star Wars, if we're being objective. Do I enjoy it more? Probably not. Point is, that movie appealed to adults, and everybody who liked that movie back then is dead. And now you don't hear as many people talking about Chinatown. It's still iconic. It's talked about, especially among movie buffs and acting circles. But Star Wars is universal because they got
Here's
the
another
kids.
example. Like
That sounds messed up, but they did.
yeah, they did.
They did. Gotta get the kids.
Blade Runner, that universe didn't really. Blade Runner's a little different. Like they didn't really try to create like a huge franchise out of it, but that appealed to adults, and they got a second film, and that's really it. Doesn't have a huge cultural.
Yeah, I feel like
presence.
the cultural relevance it has is because it's attached to Harrison Ford.
Probably.
There's no reason. You watch that movie, there's no reason why a movie like that should even be as popuer as it is now.
I feel like
it's a
that
great
movie
but
can sometimes be too pretentious.
It's just show don't tell, right?
Yeah.
I
And I do like that sometimes.
But yeah, it's a movie that you have to put the work in, and if you're not about doing that, I totally understand that. But
Yeah.
because the first time you watch it, you're just gonna be like, "What was that? That was boring." But
You're going to keep thinking about it.
yeah, but
though.
hopefully it intrigues you
Yeah.
just a bit to get you that second watch, and then maybe by like watch 3, you start to get a bit rewarded.
Yeah.
But even then, you're like just scratching the surface of really enjoying the
I've
movie.
gone down some Blade Runner rabbit holes, and it's pretty nuts, like how much people really analyze and dig into this thing. Movies aren't, to many people, some movies they're things that you want to watch over and over and over again, especially when you're young. But most older people don't rewatch things and analyze them that deep.
Yeah. Well, but stuff like Blade Runner and Chinatown, I feel like it's supposed to be more, at least from an old school perspective, what art was supposed to be. Like, it represents the time it was created, and then we need the new one. It's fast.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't think really about longevity. It's like, this is art, and we're making it now.
Yeah.
I feel like they thought of it that way. Whereas, like, George Lucas, he's thinking big. He's thinking in decades, and I feel like that's what separated him from everybody else. And changed the movie industry for better, for worse. But I'd like to get into kind of like my thoughts about the whole arc of Star Wars. Super cool.
Yeah, like because Star Wars, we could definitely get into that because Star Wars has really been stretched out.
Yeah.
And like, so kind of tell me how it's gotten to that point, I guess.
So I got a lot to say here. Okay?
Yeah.
I love Star Wars. I grew up with it, as you all know. But if I was just saying to you, if I'm going to be honest, if we're talking what out of in all of Star Wars canon is great, perfect, I have no problems with, nothing makes me totally happy, it's 2 movies. That's it. Even Return of the Jedi, it's close, but that even gets people talk about issues with that now.
Yeah.
Right?
2 movies are good.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like it represents the broader like narrative of Star Wars, which is, to me, it's the story of a tortured artist. George Lucas was an artsy film guy making these films that were supposed to be one-off and very subversive. The American Graffiti is like a hangout movie, and then he did one before, which is like really avant-garde and out there and hard to understand.
Yeah.
So he decides, he gets this budget for this action movie that's also very experimental and out there at the time. But when he was making Star Wars, he didn't have those ambitions to that become his whole life and to lead it. And Star Wars blows up, becomes the biggest movie of all time, and that's amazing for him. He starts all these companies, but it almost becomes like the Midas touch, like how everything you touch turns to gold.
Yep.
So now Star Wars is great. He's made all this money. He's the top guy in Hollywood, biggest movie of all time. But now he can't escape it. And George Lucas was also some guy who hated the Hollywood studios. He hated the studio system. He
couldn't get them to pick up his first script for Star Wars in the first place.
They always cut his movies by 5 minutes. He didn't want. He was very interested in the authenticity of the art and preserving the art. And people, if you're not involved in the movie, you don't get a say.
Yeah.
And he hated the studio system. He preferred Russian.
I've watched some so inspirational things of him speaking on what you're speaking on right now.
He preferred Russian cinema, right? Like not preferred, but he talked highly of it, right? Because they were allowed to be more creative because they had funding of the government, in his opinion, right? So totally anti-corporate guy. Yeah. And what ends up happening is he ends up making this thing that was supposed to be art. He can't escape it, and it becomes the biggest corporate entity of all time. And it ends up stopping him from directing more movies, which is what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He's only made like 6 movies as far as what he's directed.
Yeah.
And eventually he accepts it and decides, I'm going to take over Star Wars again. Everybody hates it.
Yeah.
He gets slapped, and it gets destroyed so bad by him trying to be artistically creative with the prequels that now he ends up selling it to the biggest movie studio of all time, the exact people that he hated. And on top of that, his movie created the world we're in today, where there are no standalone, like, really art house movies making big
Star Wars.
money.
This is Star Wars in real life.
Yeah. And now it's all franchises, and he created a movie world that he probably doesn't like, from what I would guess. And to me, that's just, I don't want it to down Star Wars. It's so fascinating.
Okay, hold on.
It's tragic.
Hold on.
We said a lot there. I said a lot there.
What you're literally telling me right now is that George Lucas made Disney even more what they are today.
Yeah, he's the biggest. Him along with Steven.
God.
Star Wars along with Jaws and Steven Spielberg along with George Lucas created the modern movie world we're in today, probably without even realizing.
Fucking Star Wars gave Disney such a huge boost.
Yeah.
They allowed them to monopolize even more in the entertainment industry.
He tried to be creative, got spat on, and it ended up with him selling to the people that he hated.
Yeah,
and making him stronger.
I'm also hearing rumors that he's kind of wanting to direct another Star Wars film. Kind of wants to come back. I don't know if it's false or not, but
they also lied to him. From what
he executive produces, which means he comes and stands around on the set and answers some people's questions.
According to him, they said that he was going to have a lot more involvement and they were going to go off his script, and none of that happened. Yeah, I don't know about that. My point is, Star Wars.
They didn't take any of his.
Yeah. It's just a tragic. If Star Wars, the arc of it is tragic. If you think
his Star Wars is, I know, his Star Wars is the Skywalker story.
Yeah.
To him, that's what Star Wars is the story of the Skywalkers, and the new movies are about the Skywalkers, but like through Ben Solo, and Leia, but
even
it goes off track. They didn't follow what his vision was for his universe.
Sorry, my mind's like exploding. But
mine too.
Even if you go back to the classic days,
yeah,
he couldn't stop the Corbin machine. The Christmas special,
yeah,
is crap, and that slide, that was let slide. And there's even things in Return of the Jedi that certain people do not like, and that, so it's kind of it's just kind of interesting, right? Like that Star Wars is so loved as it should be. I mean, I really sound like I hate Star Wars. I feel like I'm trying to.
No, it's just Star Wars has really been put through the ringer since it came out in '77, along with its maker.
It's so
that's
great.
What we want this part of the conversation to be, is like acknowledging the dark side of Star Wars and what is done for the industry, how many jabs Star Wars has taken, and
it's so great, but also like it's so evil at the same time. Like what
it created and inspired so many things, but that's also like propelled the corporate executives of the entertainment industry that don't really care about how movies are made, more about how well movies do.
I think it really represents the old guard a lot more than people would care to admit. Like, I don't think if let's say cinema continues as this big thing, as far as what's being done that's new and is going to define how things look in the future, it's probably not these new Star Wars movies.
Wow.
Star Wars is probably, these new Star Wars movies may represent like the end of, a certain era of the big action franchise era. I hope maybe we'll get something new, but who knows?
Well,
the whole medium could change, right? So
more or less, our Lord and Savior George Lucas was a sellout.
Yeah, but I feel bad for him because in a way it was like
anybody in his position would also.
He never wanted to be the head of Star Wars, and then when he finally gave in and said, "Okay, I'm going to take care of it and put my heart and soul into it," he got shit on. And ended up basically being hated by his own fans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what else was there to do?
It's unfortunate for me, like, as someone who loves to create art and, like, is inspired by art and whatnot, is, like, how he spawned and created Industrial Light and Magic, which is a company full of, like, visionaries and Lucas Arts, people who made all those, back in the day, Star Wars games. These are all separate companies and branches that come out of Lucasfilm itself, which is another, the film company under George Lucas. He sold it all. And I really don't know what happened to those people who work at LucasArts, or they were all laid off because LucasArts isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah.
In which they were ambitious people who were under the Star Wars umbrella, who got to create content and create games for us. Game studios dedicated to making Star Wars specifically, and that's something we lost in this transaction. Which nowadays, if Lucasfilm stayed what it was back then and just kept doing their thing now, multi-billion-dollar company it would have became.
And we'd probably have more, at least what you and I want, which is just more Star Wars around, but it's more low key. It's like TV shows, video games.
Quality content, though, yeah.
But see, we grew up in an era where it was like that, and then we bitched that there wasn't movies. So,
like, I don't know.
We're just typical Star Wars fans who are never happy at the end of the day. But
I'm also happy right now because this new video game came out, Jedi Survivor, and complete canon. It takes place in between 3 and 4. And it follows a Jedi named Cal Kestis, who now has gotten his footing. He's badass and has cameo appearances, and he's making his way through the Empire-ruled galaxy as a Jedi. And it's incredible. It has 6 hours, but not 6, like almost 20 plus hours of new Star Wars story, canon story. It even explores the High Republic, which is set 100 years before Phantom Menace, and it just blows up the timeline more. So that's great Star Wars storytelling, except it's not in a movie, it's in a game. But games are becoming movies, man. You could go watch this entire game, all the cutscenes, like a movie, a 6-hour movie if you cut it down, and it's just incredible that we get to play these Star Wars experiences now.
Yeah, and it's a shame it didn't work out with LucasArts. And
would you want George Lucas to come back?
No, I just say let sleeping dogs lie. He never wanted to head it. I don't expect him to. The guy's like 70-something years old. He's done enough with Star Wars, dealt with enough bullshit, and it's just not needed. It's not necessary.
But keep him around as an executive.
But I just don't think we need Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
anymore.
You do think that?
I just don't think we need.
I need it still, man. I mean,
well,
I wasn't too
do.
happy overall with Mando like season 3, but still getting a new chapter of Star Wars content every week, a new piece of canon was just exciting for me as a fan.
You know what? I'm gonna make a.
And I'm hyped for Ahsoka because I was a huge fan of Rebels.
No, you know what? It should stay around because people want it. At the end of the day, I don't have to watch it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just in my world. I don't watch it because I just don't feel like I don't really care about what it's doing anymore. But there are people who do.
That's okay. Because now, like...
But I just personally would not care if Star Wars stopped making new content tomorrow. And I'm more of the opinion, I'll keep up with something as long as I think it's still has like...
Well, it's become a little more difficult now because like a lot of niche Star Wars things are popular, and what's came out, like someone like you who just enjoys the films doesn't really dive too deep into the extra universe content. Like what's Andor gonna do for you?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, same with Book of Boba Fett. Like it's just for the casual people. All these like background characters and background side stories are now being pushed up to the front, and it's difficult for like casual people to kind of get into.
And how much stuff am I supposed to watch from one
But
thing?
the fans love it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
How much stuff am I supposed to watch from one thing though? That's kind of also where I'm at.
Exactly.
Between like YouTube's in the game with what I'm watching.
Yeah.
At home. And honestly, YouTube takes a significant chunk away from movies and TV compared to when I was a kid. And so I to delve deep and get really into Star Wars and watch every single thing, that just seems like such a taxing thing.
Yeah, it's easy for me now because like I'm aware of these things coming out, and like when I sit down to eat, I'm not watching movies like I used to. I'm watching YouTube now, but I'm watching like Star Wars YouTube stuff. So like it's just kind of always like being a part of it and like collecting that stuff. And if you are one of those people that does things like that, all of the like the new Ahsoka show and these new movies are talking about, it's really exciting for you. But like as a casual person, why the hell would any mom or dad who knows what Star Wars is, why are they gonna watch Ahsoka?
I'm watching more of it now because of podcasts. I'll be watching Ahsoka, which is what I'm actually interested in. Because now I got to watch things that I'm not interested in watching because of this show, which is fine. I want to do that. I like critiquing stuff, giving my opinion on. But anyway, Star Wars. We got off on a tangent there.
A big tangent, but like there's a lot of variety this week in what we talked about.
Yeah.
So,
but Star Wars, yeah. I always sound a bit down on it. I love it. I still like the prequels. I just don't think they. I don't think they are like great movies. I feel like that's not fair.
I really, it's become hard lately to watch Attack of the Clones and have a good time. It's been difficult because it is a little too much for me, a little too cheesy, a little too slow. But like, I've said it a couple times. I don't know if it upsets people, but I do enjoy Phantom Menace more than Episode 2.
I enjoy Phantom Menace more.
I really actually like Phantom Menace a lot.
I know. People think those movies are great, and that's their opinion. I just feel like Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith are pretty close to being great. And
well, Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon's one of my favorite characters, right? And that's a Qui-Gon movie, essentially.
Yeah, for me, they're close. They're close. But no, they don't.
It's also crazy, like the fact that Phantom Menace takes place within the last week of Qui-Gon's life. He really, I don't ever get to understand him as a character more. And I was actually talking with a younger family member of mine, and they don't really care or appreciate Qui-Gon and his importance. So like, who cares about Qui-Gon? Like that's their opinion, really. But they're all on board for Kylo Ren, and they think I'm on board for Kylo Ren too. But like, that's why I think Qui-Gon is underappreciated, because you don't understand him as a Jedi because you only knew him in the last week before he died. Qui-Gon was a visionary of the Jedi, and he went against the grain. He declined being put on the Jedi Council because he didn't want to be forced into extremist views and agreements with what's the best way to do something. He liked to explore the Force and explore life, and he also usually disagreed with the Jedi. Qui-Gon's fascinating to me.
Yeah, they could have done more. But
that's a big tangent, but I love Qui-Gon, and that's probably why I love Phantom Menace.
Yeah, but like they have different roles in the movie too, which is why Kylo Ren is always going to be more of a, because he's kind of the Darth Vader of the movie, the foil, right? Whereas Qui-Gon Jinn he's more of a supporting character, but he does steal the movie.
Yeah, he does. He's a mystery, really.
Yeah, I thought he was cool as a kid. I thought he was a cool character. He never really stuck out as one of my favorites. I always thought Darth Maul was more underutilized in the movies.
Yeah,
in the movie front,
for sure.
He's appeared in a lot of other things, but I don't know. I'm not one to correct on how things went. Like, I'm sure if you gave me a budget to make a Star Wars movie, I'd fuck it up. So
yeah, absolutely.
But
right?
we're just having fun here. But like,
just like talking shit.
But I often think, like, what if Darth Maul was in maybe 2 of those movies, maybe all 3? What does that look like?
Yo, there's this video.
But how would that work?
And this guy rewrote the prequels. He rewrote them, kept all the characters, moved a lot of the events around. But for example, like, who showed up to seize Anakin, as in Jedi-wise, he did that differently. And then he wrote in how emotionally that changed Anakin more, or he went so deep. He did it for all the prequels, and it's, as he's narrating the story, it's also drawn for you. The whole 10-minute video, he's drawn visuals. It's incredible, and it just shows you the potential. And it'll just make you even more get into Star Wars even more. But come on, the amount of work that the fans put in, Star Wars has inspired so many people. The amount of artwork that Star Wars has spawned is insane.
Well, they have both fan loyalty and mainstream appeal. That's why.
Star Wars is just magical to me, you know, and I hope it is for other people too. And in the coming generations, I hope Star Wars stays alive, and I hope it keeps getting reinvented.
It'll be interesting to see how it keeps going.
We're gonna be alive. Hopefully, we'll be alive for its 100th anniversary.
Really, we could be. Oh my god, I feel like it'll be looked at like how Elvis is by then.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Like, people will know it, like, because. So there's things in pop culture.
Also, the dark side about it too. The dark side of Elvis and his overworking, just like how Star Wars has been overworked.
But you become more of a historical figure. You know, in the sense that, like, you're so famous. It's such a famous entity, like Frank Sinatra, Elvis, right? Those really old things.
Yeah.
That they're more famous for, like, oh, I know Frank Sinatra because he was famous in the 40s and 50s. Right, and I know Elvis because he was famous in the 50s, and I know Star Wars because it was big in the 70s. Like, it's not.
Oh, Star Wars was a big thing back then.
Yeah, you did, but you don't know anything else about them. Yeah. Really, I could see that happening.
It's kind of like, to most people our age and the younger generation now, like rappers like Tupac and Biggie, and like you know to respect them, and you know that they're greats, and like some of the gods of rap and whatnot. But to you, like a modern day listener, might not be the type of thing that you enjoy as much, but like you respect it anyway.
I feel like it'll eventually become that.
Yeah,
like, one day. But right now, it's
like, even people who don't enjoy Bob Marley know to respect Bob Marley. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And I guess it already has that to an extent, but it's still pretty current.
Yeah.
As far as popular it is. But I would say a lot of the shine is gone.
Yeah, it's pretty dirty out there. The way people are talking about Star Wars in these comment sections, it's getting thrown through dragged through the gutter lately. And every week a new Mando episode would pop up, and every week people would be tearing it apart and talking shit every week about the new episode because they're not happy with it, and it's not exactly what they wanted. And
there are people who have made careers of shitting on Star Wars. in the past almost 10 years.
Just like anything, though, it's got its haters.
But Star Wars in particular, like, and Marvel, those two, you make a career. I mean, we're kind of making, well, if this podcast gets popular.
Yeah,
a lot of people
exactly.
talk
Like
about Star
pop
Wars
culture
and
in
Marvel.
general, but like Star Wars is a big inspiration.
Yeah.
Doing what we're doing right now
Like,
is
even just hating alone, like, see, there's just people
Yeah.
who just straight up everything is just shitting on Star Wars.
I couldn't do that. Like, there's a lot of channels that are made and built around just hating on stuff.
And it's crazy.
And in reality, they don't actually hate everything, but they do it because it's fun to make those videos. But I couldn't do it.
I like that though, but people hate it. I'm like,
It's fun to be cynical, but
So no, sometimes I want to complain.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like even now with Star Wars, like I just feel like I have such an expectation that it's not going to be good. That it's
I
like,
know, and it's sad that everybody feels that way too.
so I go in with, I feel like even if they made something decent, it would take me a while to even realize, because it's just like, I'm so nitpicky now on everything because they've just made me so annoyed.
Yeah. I'm quite nitpicky also, but when something... I'm nitpicky also, but I do try to view it with an open mind and enjoy it for what it is. I'm mostly speaking on when a new episode was out of something.
Yeah.
There's a little too much Star Wars. Mando was dropping episodes, and the animated show Bad Batch was also dropping episodes at the same time. Last week, 2 weeks ago, Star Wars Visions Season 2 dropped, which is like anime Star Wars stories. Also dropped... that's crazy. That's 3 separate projects. A children's animated Star Wars show dropped the same day as that anime one did. So in the past month, that's like 4 projects all new coming to Disney Plus. So pretty oversaturated.
Yeah, well, that's what's going to happen, right? That's what's,
You pick and choose though, but go on to Disney Plus, go over to Star Wars and check out the Star Wars Visions and just scroll through them and just pick one. They're all... Each episode is done by a different animation studio, animation studio, and they're all not canon. They're just 20-minute stories. Just pick one that looks interesting. Artists making Star Wars inspired content.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's what it was like for Disney. They didn't tell them what stories to do. They just said make a Star Wars story. For season 1, there's like 10 studios, there's 10 episodes, and each studio got to make a Star Wars story they wanted to. Outside of canon, so they could do whatever they want. It's just great Star Wars content if anyone's looking to just check something out without having to dive into the universe.
That's cool, right? Like that.
I haven't watched all of them. I just watched ones that look interesting.
I'll check it out.
Just watch one that looks interesting.
Or yeah, I mean, I'll check it out. I haven't really delved. I haven't watched Star Wars.
Because there's some where I'm looking at the thumbnail, I'm like, it looks like a stupid kid's story. I'm like, But then the next one is like a dark, black and white, gritty Ronin samurai Star Wars story. It's pretty cool.
So there you go. I mean, what did I watch? I was watching a couple of episodes of the Clone Wars. I just have it in the background.
Clone Wars is phenomenal.
I enjoy that.
Did you check out the last season?
I don't know if I made it that far. I watched it back in the day,
Okay.
but I don't know if I saw the whole thing. I don't remember.
So back in the hold on, but back in the day, it ended on like season 6.
I'm gonna guess I only saw the original run. Would be my guess.
Well, it ended on season 6, and then in 2019,
Yeah, they
season
did
7
another
came
season,
out. Phenomenal season. The one, it is the best season,
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
and now it's done. And I'm glad they got to come back and just finish it.
Yeah, that's all they should.
Clone Wars was as I said earlier in the podcast, Clone Wars was a huge part of my childhood. So.
Oh, that's great stuff. That's what I think of a lot when I think Star Wars. And now I look back on that 10-year gap really nostalgically, right, which is kind of the blowback of the prequels and the Clone Wars. And that was all there really was to say about Star Wars. And from what I remember in like 2008, 2009, 2010, when we would have been really, really into it. And in a lot of ways, that was more of a fun time than it is now. But I always feel bad for saying that, though, because we wanted this so bad.
We did, man.
I wish we had been younger.
Because look, if you tell me as a kid watching Clone Wars, there's gonna be a live action Ahsoka show where she's grown up now and she's a great Jedi traveling the galaxy, and that would be like, I'd be like, what?
Why
Like, that's
couldn't this-
insane.
why
Like, there's a
could-
Mandalorian TV show? Like,
Why couldn't this have happened when we were 6
yeah.
or 7? Had to be
Now,
15.
would you rather be a kid who's 7, 8, 9 at right now, experiencing all these Star Wars Disney Plus
Well,
shows?
yeah,
The
they
Disney
have
Plus Star Wars universe is yours.
They'd have a lot more fun than we were having.
Yeah.
But
The merchandising is alive and well too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all you want. Baby Yoda party cups, like you got it.
yeah, and just the
All that is still bigger than it used to be. Still,
and yeah, you just enjoy and to have things like Galaxy's Edge and things like that
Yeah.
when you're a kid. Right, like it's.
but being 23 right now and being able to pick and choose what you want to watch and critique and everything and have like wrap your head around it fully. When you're a kid, you don't wrap around you don't
Yeah.
really fully understand a lot of the content you watch. So I like being able to do that now with the Disney Plus shows. There's always something to talk about, what other people thought about it, and I like seeing on Twitter the next day what people thought of the episode. Like, that's something I enjoy, like day-to-day life.
Well, the community's fun.
Yeah.
Right? I always understand that with every fan community, right? I mean,
lot
that's
of-
half the reason to do it.
There's a lot of bad sides to that community too. Like we said earlier, fans be picky, and it's nasty out there.
Yeah, well, nobody's ever going to be satisfied, and neither are we.
Like, I watched that episode of The Mandalorian with Jack Black and Lizzo, and I'm like, yeah, that was fine. Those 30. No, listen to me, because
I hate those cameos. I hate them.
I know you hate the cameos, okay, but
Cheap.
it was fun. I had fun. I was entertained. There was cool for callbacks to the prequels. I like Bo-Katan and Mando being a team, and it was a good episode that week. It was fun. I get to look back at it and laugh at it. To many people, it was like a clown fest, and I do get that also, but it was a little bit of a treat to wake up and watch that episode. It was just fun. It was 30 minutes, and I continue about my day, and like that. Star Wars has always been my escape, and like every week, these episodes have given me that escape.
Yeah.
There are some episodes that are slow and boring, and they don't give me that escape. But that one specifically, like, it did. I was still amazed that Jack Black is now a canon Star Wars character. That's actually kind of exciting to me.
Star Wars has too much baggage now for me to totally escape a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and especially now because
I can see that also.
And when I'm watching it now, it's in podcast context too, which makes it like that's one thing about watching stuff for a podcast. You're never going to be totally immersed. But and now a lot
because you're always thinking about how things are made.
yeah. And all the recent times I've watched Star Wars, it's been to critique. So I really haven't been immersed in it in a little while.
You need to get some beers, get some brewskis, kick back, and just enjoy it for what it is again.
Yeah.
It might make you feel young.
Some I haven't seen in a while, in a long time. I don't.
When was the last time you watched Phantom Menace?
It's got to be maybe like a year. It can't
Okay,
be
okay.
that long.
That's okay, though. I watched it this year, and I pretty much catch it every year.
I probably watch almost all 6. That's all 6. Okay. The first 6 released, I'll probably catch at least all of them like once a year.
Yeah.
Maybe not all the way through,
Yeah.
but I know at some point. Maybe I skip a year on a couple of them. Okay, I definitely went a couple of years without seeing Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody
And
cares.
episode 3, I probably watch episode 3 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Probably twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a ton of rewatch value.
Yeah.
Like, people watch these movies for years to come. It'll be a year or two, and people are like, oh, I got to watch that again. Not a lot of people are like that.
Some people are. I mean, I feel like I need to spread it out now because I've seen those movies so many times. I almost don't need to watch them anymore, and I almost purposely just spread out when I watch Star Wars now because I don't want to hate. I don't want to hate the movies that I love.
Yeah.
Do you ever worry about that with your really early loves? Like, are we gonna be watching Pirates of the Caribbean when we're 40? You know how many times we're gonna seen it by then?
Yeah, it makes you feel like an old geezer watching these things, being like, rewatching it again and still being entertained for the
Yeah.
100th time.
It's just like, yeah, I don't know if that's gonna be like that. I feel like a lot of the stuff that we loved that when we were like 10 that we still love now. I don't know. I feel like we won't be. A lot of the music I like.
I can say that only confidently about Star Wars and Batman. Is something that'll be in my flesh and blood until I die. Like Star Wars will always be something I'll enjoy for the rest of my life.
But you know what'll happen?
And everyone has that thing.
Yeah.
For you, what is that for you?
I don't know. Like they'll always
Something you'll enjoy and it'll make you smile till the day you die.
There's always something, right?
Like, is that Kiss
Probably.
or just rock in general?
Probably, but then
Yeah.
like I don't know. I also wonder with some of the kids, like songs in particular.
Star Wars for you? Those movies? Do you see those original 6 running stale for you?
Yeah. No.
No.
And like maybe I don't know Quentin Tarantino or something like that. If you're talking about from when I'm really young, but like
Are you ever gonna get a Quentin Tarantino tattoo?
no.
No.
He's I don't like. I'm not. I want to get a pop culture tattoo, but at the same time, it's just like there's people attached to those with things that they do that I don't like or things about their personality, and it's like yeah, you can separate it, but like at the same time, it's an expression from them, and it's like I don't know, getting a Quentin Tarantino tattoo. Like I know some of the stuff he's done.
I'm thinking about like getting the carriage from Hateful Eight tattoo.
I overthink
Like-
it. I just worry about something coming out about a celebrity, and then I have their tattoo.
You know, it'd be a cool one. Hateful Eight, that one shot where their hand goes on the T to like lift the thing up. That just image would be a cool tattoo. I'm just thinking about stills from the movie that I'd like. That's
Nice.
obviously one of my favorite Tarantinos, just because I like westerns and I like the mystery vibe of that movie.
Yeah.
There's a couple I'd get.
There's symbols. Yeah, I guess you could get that would be cool. I just worry about them, like something coming out about them, and you have a
Right.
tattoo about them. Like that's just. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example.
That's
recently.
true. I haven't really considered that. You get a tattoo of a movie or a character or something, and then the real life actor or actress could turn out to be a monster, and then you're like, oh my god.
Well, you got Star Wars, but I mean, to me, Star Wars is untouchable now.
I got a Jawa on my forearm, so
You want to know what it is? I think Star Wars is on the Michael Jackson level, where it's like, I think even if something were to come out now,
would I be
everybody would just
ashamed?
kind of be like,
Yeah.
It's like Michael Jackson, like, it's pretty much confirmed most people think he's a pedophile, but his music still gets played. There's talk of a biopic coming up. It hasn't been, like, totally canceled. People still listen to him all the time. It's just
True.
kind of like, shh, we don't talk about that. He's on his, he's
So-
so popular.
Are you thinking about if something came out about George Lucas?
Yeah, I feel like it wouldn't even, like, I feel like Star Wars would just
I could see him getting crucified.
It'd be a bit more controversial, but if Michael Jackson's music can still continue on after that, because it's so personal, because it's
Yeah.
tied to him
Yeah.
as a person. Star Wars now is even removed from George Lucas, so they even
That's
have that going.
true,
for it.
man.
So
That's
I feel
true.
like it wouldn't even blink an eye. It would
Kind of like Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling now.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't even blink an eye. It's a bit. It would be a bit. Star Wars would become a bit more controversial.
Yeah.
But it would still be a powerhouse. It's like.
Wow, that's interesting. I never actually thought about that.
And if the stuff, like you look at Michael Jackson, if the stuff at MJ, right, heinous, right?
Yeah.
And like, but you think of like R. Kelly, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to compare. We're not going to compare who's worse and what's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
But the point is, if R. Kelly had been as iconic and as famous as Michael Jackson, does it happen?
True.
Like, do you feel like I feel like there's just certain things in pop culture. It doesn't matter what comes out about them. They're just gonna-
Some people are kind of
They're-
untouchable.
and it's like R. Kelly's like, yeah, buddy, you're not Michael Jackson. Like, you're not.
here.
Yeah, like no, nobody's shutting up for you. And it's messed up that we do that for Michael Jackson. But I'm just saying.
Do you think if
it's-
Michael Jackson was alive for all these accusations, do you think it would have went differently?
Oh, 100%. Wouldn't know anything.
Do you think they would have locked him up?
I don't know if they would have locked him up, but I don't. But his reputation would be a lot.
Yeah.
Or he got out at the right time in that sense. In that sense.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
The Prince of Pop, King of Pop.
He's known as the king.
Who's the Prince? Prince.
Prince is better.
Who's
but
the second
I love
of
Michael
Pop under Michael?
Jackson. I don't know. Of all time? Oh my God, who knows?
Are you putting Michael at the top of King of Pop? Of all
Yeah,
time.
he's probably is the highest selling. I like his music a lot. I just
Second
that's
isn't easy
the-
for you to pull out.
No, but like it depends. It could be a lot from different eras, right? Like Taylor Swift, you could even argue she's not totally pop, but if you're talking just on success,
people were calling Justin the king of pop back then.
Yeah, he kind of is.
Bieber or Tim?
The newest one.
Justin Timberlake's kind of almost had as big a run as Bieber.
Been a while though.
Yeah, it has.
He hasn't had a big hit.
But I'm talking about Timberlake at his high as compared to Bieber at his high.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I still feel like Justin Bieber's lasted longer. I think. I don't know.
And known more worldwide.
Okay, so let's do the math. This has gone totally off the rails. So what was Justin Timberlake in NSYNC?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So that's like late 90s. And he was pretty big in 2013, Mirrors, right? That was still massive. But like
that was his big. He hasn't really as. What's the other one? Suit.
His last hits, Can't Stop the Feeling. That was the last thing to like really blow up.
Dude, that was a long time. It was like 7, 8, 9 years ago.
So he probably had a solid 20-year run. So Justin Bieber hasn't quite outlasted that yet, but he's getting close. And
he's still putting out bangers though.
I'd still say Justin. I'd say Justin Bieber is more deserving of a king, a pop title in the modern day than Justin Bieber. Weeknd is pretty comparable to that kind of success.
Then you gotta say Drake, man.
Yeah, but
when it comes to radio hits and chart numbers and listens, it's unbelievable the amount of number one hits Drake has had.
But this gets into
and concurrent hits too.
But this gets into a really interesting musical conversation, right? Because Drake is the biggest, and then you say is he the king of pop? But he's hip hop. He's got that connection. But now it's the question. Hip hop's kind of bigger than pop music, so what are we doing calling it pop music anymore? Rap is bigger than pop, really, if you think about it today.
So definitely more of like cultural relevancy now, hip hop.
And you know what's so weird and kind of fucked up? Pop music is almost now like it's the respected music. Like if you're a music person now, you like the pop songs. Like people and you have people like me, right?
Because it appeals to the masses.
Yeah, but like we have people who are really into music, and we're listening to like Ariana Grande and Carly Rae Jepsen, and liking it, and it's like, but it's pop music, and it's just like because rap now is kind of the new pop music. The whole term pop music is kind of outdated because rap's bigger than it now.
People really don't depict and give things credit that appeal to the masses. Like who's out here critiquing Carly Rae Jepsen's new album and telling us if it's actually a really well-crafted album or not. Nobody really depicts that stuff as much as hip-hop is.
But hip-hop is it's everything. In culture, too, how we dress, it's insane.
This whole episode has been about like cultural relevancy and the impact that certain things have on our culture. And I think that's a lot of what the slime is about, and what we wanted the slime to be about is talk about how these things have made us who we are. Looking at like down this table right here is all just trinkets from pop culture and like things that made us who we are today.
Okay, well, I got a question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Kind of concluding, but
question to end off the ep.
How much longer do you think rap's got? What's the cool thing? It feels like it go a long time, but you're only as cool as long as you're majority appealing to the young, right? Rock music lasted till about the 2000s because you get to a point where rock starts in the 50s, where most rock fans now are old people. Okay, hold on. And now it can't be cool.
Okay,
when does that happen with rap?
2023.
Rap's started getting big in the 80s, so we're getting to the 40-year mark of like having big rap songs consistently.
I think by to be fair and to be safe, I think what people listen to and what the masses listen to and what's the most popular will have drastically changed away from rap and hip hop by 2050 for sure.
You know what is the sign, in my opinion? When it starts to be taken as like serious culture. That's how you know we're heading towards the end. Like if you look when rock started to lose some of its cool and its edge in the 80s and the 90s, didn't die, it's still really popular, but starting to is when they started at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and getting together.
Now you have rap artists.
And historic, like rap is seen as like high art now. And
rappers are being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now.
But even outside of that, like rap is just this really respected, almost cultural, like higher thing, and that's great. It should be.
Yeah.
But that's the sign that something's gonna have to come away now and be the new voice of the
I'd
young.
still give it another
But
20 plus years.
Yeah, whether that happens in 10, 20 years, right?
Because rap is going to change and evolve and sound a lot different, but it will still be considered rap for a while.
and if it's like how rock went out, it'll be a slow.
Slow out, yeah, because rock kind of turned into pop rock and then just into pop.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's a like rock starts to lose its footing around the mid '80s. It starts to lose its first little bit of cool.
Yeah,
It's still
for sure.
dominating, but like it starts to, and then it's just this like slow until by the 2000s, like there's no popular rock music in the charts really. And I think how long does that happen to rap is really interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, we got completely off topic.
That was a great conversation, and that was like a lot bigger than what I thought it would be. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a bit more of a special podcast today. We just talked about a lot of stuff with inspiration and meaning behind it.
Yeah.
So that's great, guys. Really, please drop into the comments this week, either on our Instagram or on our YouTube, and just let us know like what big cultural thing, whether that be movies or music or whatever, really has had the biggest impact on you as a person. What sprung a lot of your creativity? For you,
Yeah.
what would you say music-wise? Was it Kiss for you?
That's what
untouched-
started it, but
Yeah.
they're not the best band. And
No, that's not what I asked.
Yeah,
though.
I
That's
know.
not
I
what
hate-
inspires you.
I
What
hate-
excites you.
I kind of hate mentioning it's my favorite band nowadays because I feel like people immediately limit what my musical taste is.
Right.
Like, listen to so much other stuff like compared to that. But,
that's
yeah, they
just
started it
your-
all.
Yeah.
It's like you with Star Wars and movies.
What started it all for you? Is what we're asking
Yeah.
this week. Your untouchable thing that you'll like until the day you die.
It's like a sports team. It doesn't matter how poorly they do.
Yeah.
You're going to keep supporting it.
Let us know, guys, and we will catch you next week. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.